What makes a man truly unbreakable? Is it the strength of his body, the sharpness of his mind, or something far more ruthless hidden beneath the surface? Most men believe resilience comes from endurance or courage, yet they collapse the moment their emotions are exposed, their desires betrayed, or their fears unveiled. Power does not belong to the one who feels most deeply, but to the one who governs what he reveals, the one who bends suffering into strategy. There is a darker law at work in survival, one that few dare to face, and fewer still have mastered. Would you hear it? Men believe their strength lies in how loudly they cry out, how openly they bleed, how desperately they wish to be seen. They mistake exposure for courage and vulnerability for authenticity. But in truth, nothing renders a man weaker than allowing others a window into the storms of his heart. For the moment you let your emotions spill uncontrolled, you give your adversary the keys to your destruction. Those who watch you are always calculating, always seeking advantage, and when they glimpse your fears, your anger, or your longing, they know exactly where to strike. Thus, the first law of becoming unbreakable is to master the theater of emotion, to cloak what you feel behind a mask that no one can penetrate. Understand this: the world does not reward the man who cries out in suffering, nor does it spare the one who confesses his wounds. Pity is fleeting, but respect is enduring. If you cannot govern your face, if you cannot silence the trembling in your voice, you become a slave to every manipulator who knows how to press the right nerve. The wise do not expose their hearts to the judgment of the crowd, for the crowd is merciless. They present calmness where there is fire within, and indifference where there is turbulence. This is not dishonesty, it is strategy. The strong man feels everything but reveals nothing. He knows the force of rage, but he waits until rage can serve him. He knows the pull of despair, but he never lets despair write his countenance. To the world, he appears unshaken, even when a tempest roars in silence beneath his skin. This appearance alone disarms enemies, for most men expect to see cracks, expect to see weakness. When they find none, they stumble, unsettled by the mystery of your calm. You must also understand that your emotions, once controlled, become instruments rather than liabilities. Anger can ignite resolve, pain can sharpen your will, fear can make you vigilant, but only if you hold them firmly in your grasp. If instead they hold you, they drag you into ruin. Thus, concealment is not suppression, it is dominion. It is the ability to summon or silence any feeling as though you were the conductor of your own inner symphony, letting the music rise or fall only when it serves your design. Never forget that men admire those they cannot read. Mystery is power, and silence is its weapon. When others do not know whether you are hurt, they cannot press the wound. When they cannot see whether you are angered, they cannot provoke you. When they cannot tell if you are afraid, they cannot threaten you. And so you walk among them untouchable, while they live chained to the chaos of their exposed hearts. To become unbreakable, learn to suffer unseen, to smile when you are burning, to hold stillness in moments where others collapse. For the man who governs the theater of emotion becomes more than a player upon the stage. He becomes the master of it. Most men despise pain, and in their hatred of it, they squander its value. They flee from it, curse it, and in doing so they make themselves its slaves. Yet the one who seeks to be unbreakable must not run from pain, but invite it into his company as both teacher and forge. What wounds others is the very fire that can harden you. If only you cease to see it as punishment and begin to treat it as preparation. The humiliations you suffer the betrayals that cut you, the disappointments that choke you with bitterness. All of these are gifts concealed in cruelty. They strip away illusions. They burn out weakness. They sharpen your instincts. Where the fragile man collapses under such weight, the one who endures rises with a strength that no comfort could ever give. You must understand that every strike against you offers a choice to diminish or to grow. Most men diminish because they seek escape, distraction, or pity. They drown their wounds in pleasure, in drink, in hollow consolation, and so their suffering is wasted. But the wise man, the one determined to become unbreakable, swallows pain whole and lets it change him. He studies his wounds as a commander studies the battlefield, asking not, "Why me?" but "What weapon lies hidden here?" In this way, the very blows intended to weaken him become the secret of his endurance. Do not imagine that pain makes you less. It makes you more. For what is strength but the memory of trials overcome? What is resolve but the refusal to bow before despair? Every scar you carry is a testament that you lived through what was meant to bury you. And if you can learn to see pain not as an enemy, but as a silent ally, then every wound becomes an investment in your own invincibility. Consider the man who has never been betrayed, never been cast aside, never felt the cold weight of loss. He appears fortunate, but he is brittle, for he has not yet learned the depths of his own endurance. A single blow can break him, for he has not trained under the discipline of suffering. Compare him to the man who has walked through fire, who has blood without relief, who has seen trust shattered and dreams scattered to dust. This man, though scarred, walks with a power that no soft life could ever breed. He does not fear loss, for he has known it. He does not collapse under betrayal, for he has already survived worse. To turn pain into power is to strip it of its sting and wield it as a blade. It is to look into the eyes of suffering and say, "You will not command me. I will command you." And once you master this, you are no longer merely a man enduring hardship. You are a man refined by it, elevated by it, made indestructible through it. The one who feeds upon pain becomes untouchable, for no enemy can take away what he has already learned to endure. A man who cannot govern himself is doomed to be governed by others. This is the silent truth most refuse to face. He who lacks mastery over his impulses, his appetites, and his fears becomes little more than a servant to them. Anger commands him, desire drives him, fear restrains him. And in this bondage, he mistakes chaos for freedom. To be unbreakable, you must first place yourself under your own rule, for no kingdom is stronger than the one who reigns within himself. Look closely at those who claim to hold power. Many of them are slaves in disguise. The ruler who lashes out in fury at a slight is ruled by his temper. The man who cannot resist pleasure is chained by it. The one who trembles at the thought of loss is already conquered by fear before a single blow is struck. These men, though crowned in gold or seated on thrones, are not sovereign. They are subjects of their own weakness, and weakness is the opening through which every enemy enters. Discipline, therefore, is not a burden but a throne. When you learn to restrain your impulses, you build a fortress within that no storm can breach. When you deny yourself indulgence, you sharpen your will to steel. When you silence fear and act despite its whisper, you break its hold and render it powerless. Such mastery does not strip life of passion. It transforms passion into a weapon, one that obeys rather than betrays. Consider anger in its wild form. It burns without purpose, exposing you to ruin. But when mastered, it becomes fire at your command, igniting courage when you need to strike. Consider desire left unchecked. It makes a man reckless, enslaving him to promises of pleasure. Yet, when controlled, it fuels ambition, discipline, and endurance. Even fear, which most despise, has its use. The untrained man freezes at its touch, but the sovereign of himself takes fear as a lantern, illuminating dangers before they arise. Nothing within you need be destroyed. Everything within you must be ruled. True power begins not in the conquest of nations or the bending of others to your will, but in the conquest of your own restless nature. A man who is a stranger to self, command will always be exposed, because anyone who can tempt, provoke, or frighten him can seize the strings of his soul. But a man who rules himself denies his enemies those strings. He moves with intention, acts with clarity, and suffers no betrayal from within. To rule yourself is to stand beyond the reach of manipulation, for no promise of pleasure or threat of pain can sway a man who answers only to his own command. And when you have achieved such sovereignty, you will know a freedom rarer than any throne can offer, the freedom of one who is truly untouchable. The chains that bind most men are not forged from iron, but from opinion. They live enslaved to the gaze of others, trembling at criticism, intoxicated by praise, forever adjusting themselves to win approval or avoid condemnation. Such men are fragile, for their worth does not belong to them. It is borrowed from the voices of the crowd. To become unbreakable, you must sever this dependency and learn the power of indifference. Understand that the judgments of others are never neutral. They are tools of control. A compliment is often bait, a criticism a leash, and even admiration is a subtle demand that you remain what they wish you to be. When you allow their words to lift or wound you, you surrender your sovereignty. You become a puppet of opinion, rising when praised, falling when mocked, never truly standing by your own will. To be strong is not to silence the world, but to strip its voices of power over you. Indifference does not mean blindness, nor does it mean ignorance. It means that you see clearly but remain unmoved. You hear the insults, but they do not pierce you. You hear the applause, but it does not intoxicate you. For both are fleeting, both are fickle, and both are weapons that can be turned against you. When you detach from them, you disarm those who would use them to steer you. No enemy can control the man who is immune to the need for validation. Consider how easily men are manipulated by the promise of reputation. They exhaust themselves chasing approval, terrified of being misunderstood or disliked. But this desperation is a weakness, and the cunning exploit it with ease. To the indifferent man, however, reputation is neither a crown nor a curse. It is merely an echo. He remains grounded in his own measure, his own standard, and thus no external voice can define him. The indifferent man is not cold, he is free. He may accept praise with a nod, not as nourishment, but as noise. He may hear insult without flinching, for insult loses its sting when it meets a soul that does not hunger for the world's respect. This calm unsettles those who attack him, for their weapons fall useless when they cannot wound his pride. And it unsettles those who praise him, for they cannot seduce him into dependence. He stands as an island, untouchable not because he is isolated, but because he is self-contained. To become unbreakable, you must learn to walk through the voices of men as though through the wind felt, heard, but never obeyed. Let their admiration brush against you, but never root within you. Let their contempt pass by, leaving no scar. For when your value comes only from yourself, when no judgment can raise or lower you, then you have donned the truest armor, one that no hand can pierce. Most men are broken not by force, but by haste. They reveal themselves too quickly, speak too soon, and act without restraint, driven by the urgency of their own emotions. In their impatience, they expose their intentions, their fears, and their weaknesses long before a single enemy has laid a hand upon them. The path to becoming unbreakable is not found in endless action or reckless words, but in the discipline of silence and the weapon of patience. Silence unsettles because it denies others what they crave most, a knowledge of your mind. Men will press you with questions, provoke you with insults, tempt you with promises, all in the hope that you will reveal your thoughts. The impatient man obliges, pouring himself out like a vessel emptied too soon. The silent man, however, reveals nothing. His restraint forces others into uncertainty, and uncertainty breeds fear. The one who speaks less commands more, for mystery magnifies presence, while excess words diminish it. Patience, too, is a form of dominion. Most battles are lost not because one side is weaker, but because one side grows restless. They rush into traps, strike before the moment is ripe, or exhaust themselves in eagerness. The unbreakable man waits, enduring discomfort without flinching. He allows his adversaries to squander their strength, to reveal their plans, to wither under the weight of their own urgency. Time itself becomes his ally, for the longer he holds still, the more his opponents unravel. Do not mistake silence for passivity or patience for weakness. Both are active strategies, deliberate choices that turn restraint into power. A single word, spoken after long silence, strikes harder than 1,000 spilled in haste. A single action, taken after long patience, carries more weight than all the frantic movements of the restless. By withholding, you magnify. By delaying, you amplify. There is also strength in the control silence, gives over yourself. To remain still when every nerve demands reaction is to prove mastery. To endure waiting without surrendering to fear or agitation is to prove resilience. These qualities make you immune to manipulation, for you cannot be lured by provocation or rushed by urgency. Those who face you grow wary, while you remain untouched, a figure of calm they cannot predict or penetrate. The man who weaponizes silence and patience stands on the battlefield like a shadow. He speaks only when it serves him, moves only when the advantage is his, and never betrays himself to the noise of the crowd. And when he finally does strike, whether with word or deed, it comes not as one of many blows, but as the decisive act that no one saw coming. To become unbreakable, you must let silence be your shield and patience your sword. For in a world of men who waste themselves through noise and haste, the one who waits in stillness is the one who cannot be defeated. The fear of death is the final chain that binds men, the silent master that dictates their choices, their compromises, their surrender. It is not merely the grave they dread, but every loss that mirrors it, the loss of wealth, of status, of love, of comfort. All their anxieties are fragments of this deeper terror, for to lose is to die in small degrees. Thus, most men live as prisoners, ruled not by kings or tyrants, but by their own trembling before the inevitable. To become unbreakable, you must strip death of its dominion and take it as an ally, not an enemy. Consider how fragile a man becomes when he clings desperately to what can be taken from him. Threaten his fortune, and he obeys. Threaten his reputation, and he grovels. Threaten his life, and he kneels. Such a man has already surrendered before the battle begins, but the one who has looked into the eyes of death and accepted it is untouchable. He cannot be blackmailed by loss, cannot be broken by threats, for he carries within himself the calm knowledge that all things are fleeting. The acceptance of mortality is not despair. It is liberation. For when you cease fearing the end, you begin to live without chains. You no longer crawl after every scrap of safety, nor beg for guarantees that do not exist. Instead, you walk with a steadiness that unsettles others, for they sense a strength they cannot comprehend. Where they panic at risk, you remain calm. Where they shrink back from danger, you advance. Where they cling to what slips through their hands, you let go with a quiet power. This does not mean recklessness, nor a careless rush toward destruction. It means seeing clearly that nothing, neither wealth nor love, neither glory nor even life itself, is truly secure. And if nothing is secure, then fear is useless. To grasp this truth is to wear an invisible armor, one that no blade of misfortune can pierce. Death becomes no longer a terror, but a mirror, reminding you of what matters and freeing you from the illusions that enslave weaker men. When you walk with death beside you as an accepted companion, your enemies lose their sharpest weapon. They cannot frighten you with ruin, for you know all things end. They cannot lure you with promises of immortality through fame or wealth, for you see such illusions for what they are, dust dressed as gold. They cannot break you with the threat of loss, because you have already surrendered to the reality of impermanence and risen above it. The unbreakable man does not resist death with trembling hands. He acknowledges it with steady eyes. And in doing so, he strips the world of its power to make him beg, bargain, or bow. For the man who is unafraid to lose is the man who cannot be broken.